Good morning, my name is Darlene Griffiths, and this is my Module 3, the Special Education Interviews. Just some interview information. I interviewed a para, a special education teacher, and an administrator, and they all work in different districts, and so they all had different experiences that they were willing to share with me. The child find procedures. All of them agreed that there had to be a person in the child's life who realized that there were some deficits and then chose to try to help that child, whether it was notifying the counselor or the principal and letting them know, hey, I think there's something wrong here, we need to do something about this. And then it went from there, sometimes to the SIT team, and then from the SIT team, then they were pushed forward to be tested for special ed services to see if they qualified. Some challenges. The para mentioned that she sometimes forgets that the child is special, that they have unique needs and they're not like everybody else, and she's got to remember to be flexible and take her time. The special ed teacher, he felt like oftentimes special ed was a dumping ground for problem students. There wasn't enough time to fill the deficits for those students, and oftentimes there were a lot of lazy students that were labeled that have ability but just choose to be lazy. And then the administrator said his challenges were to not be in control, because he felt like the special education teacher was the one in control of the special education department and those students, and he had to kind of step back from his role as being in control of the whole school. But he did realize that he has to know the regulations, he has to know the practices and the policies that go with special education. The most rewarding part of their jobs. All three of them said when that light bulb moment happens for that child, when they see success, when their parent gets to brag about that success, all of them were agreed that it was just that moment that kept them going. What advice do they give on supervision of special education staff? Both the para and the special ed teacher said communication. They have to have time to communicate between the paras and the special ed teacher, between the special ed teacher and the regular ed teacher. They have to have that time to communicate about what are the students' needs, how am I going to meet those needs. And then the administrator said most of the time the special education teachers are hired through a different district, but they work in your district. So even though they're hired by someone else, sometimes they need to be reminded to follow the rules of your school and make sure that they are in charge of their staff, that the staff is not running the show, that the special ed teacher is taking care of paras and issues there. How do you work with parents? The para was very clear. She said, if a parent comes up to talk to me about a student, I just refer them back to the special ed teacher. I do not share any information with them because that is not my place. The special ed teacher said that he talks directly with the parents as much as possible. He makes sure that they understand the IEP and how to be involved in that process. The administrator says he sits and listens during IEPs, but when there's a ridiculous request on the parent's part for the child, he gave an example of a student who, in his IEP for years, he had that he needed headphones to listen to music. Well, that was not necessary. There were other things that could be done to help that child, and he felt like the listening to music was just an excuse. So they took that out of the IEP and wrote in a different strategy. And the administrator also said that he's there to enforce the IEP so that parents know that yes, this will be followed. So how do you work with regular education teachers? The para, she said that most of the time, most regular ed teachers will work with her and modify the curriculum, but she felt that sometimes they forget that the child is different and has special needs and maybe doesn't learn at the same speed as everyone else, and maybe it takes a little bit more time and effort to get that child where they need to be. The special ed teacher says he likes to team teach with the regular ed teacher. He's very confident in getting the information from the teachers as far as what needs to be in the IEP and getting their input before they have the IEP meeting. The administrator says he just reminds his regular education teachers to be patient. They need to be able to adjust the curriculum for those students and make sure that they follow that IEP contract and the special ed laws. And what advice would you give a first-year administrator? The para said, I want to be part of the staff too. When you have staff meetings, include us. When you communicate with the rest of the staff, communicate with us so that we're not in the dark. The special education teacher, he wanted a first-year administrator to realize that he's not a babysitter. There are lots of things that he has to do to help those students, so don't be just putting people in there to have him babysit, because he's got other things he'd much rather be doing to help those students. And the administrator said, sit back, listen, and learn. Especially with the special ed department, let them show you what needs to be done and learn from them, because they are the experts. So each of them described the special ed teacher and the building principal and what each role was. And the para said that the special ed teacher, it was her role to figure out what learning needs each student had and to set up a plan to meet those needs. And then it was the principal's job to understand that student's needs and be there to help as needed. The special ed teacher, he makes sure that he knows his students and their needs. He wants the principal to be present at IEP's meetings just in case things go sideways, in case a parent becomes hostile. He wants that principal there as backup. The administrator wants to make sure that he is still the leader in the building, but he wants to work directly with the special education department to make decisions that are going to help kids, and that he wants them to remember always that these kids are special and they need more. Some characteristics of an aspiring administrator. The para said, make sure that you remember that these kids are different and they have needs that are different from other kids, and be there to help when situations arise, whether it's with the para or with the teacher. Be there as needed. The special ed teacher said, be aware of the students and their situations. He gave the example of an emotionally disturbed student that he had, and the principal had gotten some information that the student's parent had been sent back to jail over the weekend. So the principal shared that information with the special ed teacher so that the teacher could address the situation and be ready for that student when that student came through the door. And then as far as the administrator, he said, know the laws. Remember that each child is different, be patient with them, and that the special education staff do their job. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day.